Hey guys, today we're going to go over the linked list for SYSC2100. If you guys took the class with Bailey, this will be a quick refresher. I'm not going to go too much into Java syntax today, but just more of the concepts. Well, since Java is object-oriented, these are your nodes. And they link to other nodes, hence linked lists. So what exactly does a node have? Well, it has an object item, so the class or the type is object, and this is a variable name, and then it has one of itself in here called next. So this one would be the item, and this one would be next. So what is next? Well, next is a node, and it's actually going to point to the next node. So initially you're setting next equal to the next node, and hence that is how it connects. It's actually something points to another node, which points to another node, which points to another node, which points to another word. Another node, not word. But yeah, that's the general framework and concept of linked lists. Let's talk about deleting and inserting. Alright. So here I have a linked list. These are just integer values in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And fun fact, these are not just variables, they're actually objects themselves. They're integer 1. Oops, new. That's what this one is, and this one is that. So the integer 1 is pointing to that, and yeah, that's the value. But that's just a fun fact. Nothing really too important here. The very beginning of a linked list is called the head, and the tail is the final item in the linked list is usually called the tail. Now, the node that you are currently on is called current, which is usually represented by cur, hence why these things are in a bracket. So I'll just take these out. Cur stands for current. Now, what happens if you want to delete, let's say, this guy? Right? You want to delete this little guy. Well, all you have to do, see how this one's pointing to that one? You just got to make it point to the next one. And that'll essentially get rid of it. Cool, cool, cool. Alright, how do you delete, let's say, the head? 2, 3, so I'm just going to get back to it. How do you delete something? How do you delete the very first value? Well, you make this one point to that. Or all you do is say head is equal to the next one in line. So if this is the first one, this is your head, it's going to point to the next one in line, and that's your start now. Now, there is some syntax that, well, not syntax, because you're going to have to create this for yourself. But let's talk about adding first, before we get in there. Right. So, imagine we still have the nodes all pointed like that, blah, 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 blah. They're all supposed to be arrows. And you want to insert this guy. So this is your new node. New node. And you want to insert him between this one and this one. Well, what do? Well, first, you make the new node point to that, so you don't lose it. And then you make this node point to this one. If you did the other way around, and you first made this node point to this one, nothing would be pointing to this node. And because of that, this is essentially nothing points to it, so it's no longer a linked list, it's more like two halves of a list. Therefore, you must link this to the next node before linking this one to that one. Okay, how do I insert it? How to insert a new node? At the very front. Well, all you do is the first things first, is you make this guy point to head. You make it point to head, and then you set head to this guy. Well, that looks that looks kind of weird. Well, if it's point to head, it's actually pointing to what head's pointing to, right? And then you make this one your head, because now this is already pointing to that one, and then you can reference it using head. That's a bit confusing. I'll go over another problem, and it'll make sense. And finally you have, how do I add to the back of the list? Well, at the end of a linked list, it's very important. The last value, which is supposed to point to another thing, is set to null. So what do? Well, you make the last node equal to the new node. And then you set the new node's node to null. And that's about it. Alright, now let's talk about iterating through a linked list and how to print out stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about how to use a for loop to actually iterate through the linked list. Use a for loop, right? And then you have some stuff that goes in the for loop. Well, I'm just going to write this stuff. Int I is equal to 0. Int I is less than, size. And I++. The good thing is it follows something very similar. All you do is you say a node. I don't know, you can call it anything. I'm saying call it node, I guess. And then you're going to make this equal to head. Well, what does that do? Well, that points this node, so let's say it's over here, to the beginning of the whole linked list, because head is the beginning of your linked list. So that's all it's saying. Hence, it's initializing it to the first element in the array is the analogy you can think of. Next, you go all the way until your current node does not. Sorry, you keep on going until your current. No, you go until this is true. I forgot how for loops work for a second. You go until this is false, right? That's how for loops work. And the reason why is because at the end of your array, your linked list, there's a null sign. So you go until it is equal to null. And then you're incrementing. Well, how do you increment? Well, I didn't actually talk about this yet, so this is a good place to talk about it. In your nodes class, you should have a get next. Right? And all this method does is if you're currently at position 1 in your linked list, it tells you what's in position 2. Because get next, if you remember, you had a node called in your node class, you had an instance variable called next, which is type node, so you had node next. And next is the one that holds, the next node. So if you're getting next, you're getting the next node. And if you're getting the next node, it's equivalent to incrementing the linked list or the array or your I value by 1. And that is how you're going to increment. Cur dot, no, you want to do node. Dot get next. And that is how you iterate it. Alright. And I think that's about it for linked lists, but yeah, so that concludes this week's linked list lecture. Hope you guys enjoyed.